Hello, everyone. I'm Stephanie Boozer with CUGC HQ, and I am very happy to welcome you to today's webinar. It's been a little bit since we've had a webinar. I think people were off for the summer, so I hope you've all been enjoying a great summer. But I'm glad to have Automai on our webinar stage with us here today. Before we get into the meat of our discussion, I just want to remind you that CUGC moved to a different web platform over the summer. Your CUGC account is still valid, but all we need you to do is go to mycugc.org and click join if you haven't done that yet, and you'll be able to use your original CUGC account email and just set up a new profile. It's very quick. Doesn't take long at all, and it just reconfirms you on the new site. And it will also keep all of your local group affiliations in place if you are already a member of a few local groups. So do that today. Also, our next Excel event and our last Excel event for 2022 is coming up in Louisville. It's at the Muhammad Ali Center, which I have heard is a really cool venue. So that's on October 13th. And definitely check that out. If you register by August 30th, we have slots available for a post-game bourbon tour. So if you register by the 30th, your name goes into a drawing, and then we'll figure out who wins to go on a free bourbon tour. That sounds really fun too. All right. Just a couple housekeeping notes for you. We are recording today's presentation, so we'll send you a link to that tomorrow. It's going to come to you directly from GoToWebinar, so be on the lookout for that. Also, we welcome your questions today. We're going to take as many as we can. Do type those in as you have them. I think we're going to stop and take breaks along the way and answer any questions that might be relevant to the topics being covered at the time. And then others we may save for the end, but definitely type them in as you have them, and we'll get to as many as we can. All right, so let me introduce all of our presenters and the moderator. From Automai, we have Sam Benihya. He's the CTO. Welcome, Sam.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we also have Leee Jeffries. He is a CTP. You've probably seen him on the same CUGC webinar stage. Oftentimes he's a moderator for us. Hello, Leee.
Good morning, afternoon, and evening.
And then last but not least, we have CTP Sam Jacobs. He's going to be looking out at all of your questions and helping with the Q&A discussion. So thank you for being with us today, Sam.
Certainly. Welcome, everybody.
All right, I'm going to hand things directly over to Sam Benihya. Let me just send you the controls. All right, that should be coming your way now.
All right. All right. You can see my screen. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. Today we will be talking about how Automai platform bridge the gap between RPA and load testing and continuous monitoring. So what we're going to be talking about today is a brief introduction of who Automai is and why we do things the way we do them. And then we're going to talk about robotic process automation, performance testing, and continuous monitoring, and how they all come together with our platform, the robotic automation platform. So demos, I put them at the end, but actually we will be stopping and during the presentation and looking at live demos and talking about and taking your questions, so that please just send your questions as you think about them. So we've been around for 22 years now, and we started as a testing consulting company, and then we started importing testing tools from Europe and selling them here in the United States, and do the first line of support for those products. And that allowed us to sit with our main customers and try to understand what issues they're facing and think out of the box on how to do performance testing differently to avoid the issues that are protocol issues and different applications and different things. and see how we can come with something better that works across platforms, across protocols and applications. So that's how we started our first version of RPA, which was actually for performance testing back in 2005, and it was all based, which is today the same thing, based on the interaction between the end user and the application, which means that you use some image recognition and OCR, and now we're starting to add artificial intelligence to that as well. So today we will see throughout the presentation that we have solutions for robotic process automation, for performance testing, for continuous monitoring, and functional testing as well. We have over 1,000 companies that are using our technology today. The three biggest consulting companies, Cognizant, Infosys, and Capgemini, are using our solutions for their customers as well. So I think I'll hand this now to Lee to talk about these cases here. Let me put you here, Lee. Where? Okay, so
I've disappeared.
The what? Here you are. Are you the presenter?
I am indeed.
Perfect.
Thanks, Sam. Right, so we want to talk about what these different things are within the Automai software suite. So we have something called robotic process automation, and if you've never used this before, you're not really sure what this entails. This is used to automate what would be real people doing a role. So maybe not their entire job, but definitely things like filling in repetitive forms, taking information from one location and putting it into another. Say a good example would be something like taking a PDF, analyzing the information in the PDF and being able to convert that into some information that you'd store in a database. All right, so when we talk about RPA, we're talking about that as sort of a use case. And in a second, when I finish these points, Sam's going to give you some examples of some of the customers that he has and what they use these for. With performance testing, and this is something I've spent a lot of my career doing with lots of different software, but specifically performance testing is finding pinch points and bottlenecks in an entire environment. So it's loading an environment that's been designed, say an EUC environment as an example. It could be Citrix, could be Parallels, doesn't really matter, but it's loading that environment to the point that you clarify it performs as it's designed to do, or it doesn't perform as it's designed to do, and you find some problems and then you remediate them before you put this live. So performance test is going to give you an indicator of performance metrics for the environment and also application response. Now, continuous monitoring is sort of the next step away from performance testing. So you've designed an environment, you've put it live, and now you need to continuously monitor this environment to understand how it performs. So we're able to pull out specific metrics with regards to how that environment is performing, continuous application response times and metrics to be able to understand over time if we patch that environment, if we add new software, do we see any impact? Do we have a network outage? And we're going to talk about how Automai does that. But in particular, those are the general terms. So Sam, if you could give some examples, maybe of some real use cases that you've come across with these things.
For RPA, one of our partners is actually using our solution with Citrix, just to name, on their Citrix implementations to process payments from to healthcare organizations. When they receive payments, our bots will connect to their payment system. It's another software company. Connect to their payment system, get the payment and add it to the EMR EHR system, so that it's on the spot. As soon as the credit card is being processed, you see it in the system right away. And because they're using different systems, and because of a lack of open APIs, it's very challenging to do it any other way than using an RPA solution like ours.
Cool. Thanks, Sam.
Go ahead. Mhm.
Okay, so Sam just gave a real example there of how we're using it, or how it's being used in the field. So RPA mimics actions performed by humans. Optical character recognition and image recognition is something that's highly used. Okay, and where the solution is being run from the front end, it means that this solution can perform any actions that a user would with a keyboard and a mouse. And it can also work with any sort of vendor application. Okay, so anything that you have to log into, like Citrix or VMware or AVD, this solution is able to tailor this automation around those systems as well, because we don't run on the back end, we run on the front end. Okay, cool. So I'm going to hop back a slide. I have a quick demo of what RPA does. Okay, so I'm going to record something live. It's not recorded, it's live demo. So if you could all just pray for me just for a couple of seconds, and then I'm sure everything will be fine. So
I'm sure it'll be fun. Yeah.
okay, here's the prepared demo, right? So using Scenario Builder, that is something that's in the Automai suite of software, and this is the tool that you would use to write all of your scenarios, or should I say record, because actually this demo is designed to give you an idea of how we'd use something like RPA. So let's go ahead, and this particular idea is going to be to do with transferring information from a CSV file into a web-based database. Now, this is completely hypothetical, but it's a good example of how the tool would be used. So I've created a Microsoft form, which is lovely. And this is the form that I'm going to get Automai to populate for me. So I'm recording here. I'm saying I want you to launch a web browser. That's my first action. And I don't want it as an incognito tab. So instantly you can see it started to record now. Did it fire up mine? No, it didn't. Right. I've done things in a different order from how I'd usually do them already. So, you know. Okay. What I wanted to explain is I have this CSV file, and this CSV file is stored on the network. What I need to do is take this information here, and I need to input that into a form, which is what I'm going to record now. So I'm going to close this. I don't need to open right now. I just want to display the information to you. I'm going to run through those steps again. You can see there it works with lots of other browsers as well. Oh, it just kicked in, right.
Oh, you closed it. Okay, good.
I did. Now it's recording, right. Okay, so I'm on the form, and all I have to do is type in some information that I want to, and this will be like a placeholder for when I come back later to parameterize it. So Bob heard from this company from Google, and he bought a boat. His service level was better than expected, and this is what I want. So, okay, that's submitted. Happy days. All right. So that recorded that whole process. So if I stop this here, you can see that Scenario Builder has recorded all of the actions that I manually performed with the mouse and the keyboard. So the first thing I want to do is just play this scenario back. Like always, open the browser, and this is not me typing, hands off.
And actually, we don't see very well at the bottom right. It's showing what it's doing. It has a pop-up window that shows you where it's going and what it's typing and so on.
Yeah.
So while it's playing back, just to explain, during the recording, Scenario Builder was analyzing what's happening on the screen continuously and trying to recognize components on the screen, whether buttons or fields. And of course, there's a way of training it as well to tell it when it doesn't get it correctly to tell you what that object is. It looks at the object visually. It does not really know that it's a web application or desktop or thin client. Go ahead, sorry.
So what happens here is it's had an issue. It's recorded my submit button, but it wasn't able to find it on the screen. Now, it doesn't always get it perfect, and that's fine because it has these built-in tools. So once I've rerun this scenario, I can actually see a screenshot on the screen, and I can actually clip this. I can just recapture this here, and then clip the tick, and I'm good. It's now refactored that, right? So if I go down into the scenario, you can see now I have 2 images, and you can see one is a slightly different shade, right? And that could be that simple. So if I rerun this, it should bring up another browser, it will repopulate that form for me.
So to mitigate to that, there's multiple ways. It's either the easiest way is take another version of the same image. You can also use black and white, so the colors are not always that much relevant. Or you can check a box that say you can use OCR. If it doesn't find it, it will, with image recognition, it would use OCR to look for text.
Cool. Thanks, Sam. So here we have this solution, and it's all put together. Now that would have taken you, if you wanted to write a script or something to do that, that would have taken you a lot longer than just recording this. So there's a lot of power in this, especially when you're dealing with graphical applications. So I have this CSV file with all this information in, and I now want to apply that CSV file to this workload, right, that I've just created. So there's actually an option in here where I can just simply, I always do this, right?
Yeah.
I can simply paste the path in here and type in the name of the file. And now what this means is this file is linked. The scenario builder has read the file, and I now can assign variables. So if I right click here, I can actually assign my CSV variable, and I can have it type the names within the columns in the CSV file. So I can run through this and simply replace this with the percent variables. And then we get to rating, right? Rating is 1, 2, or 3. And the rating directly relates to the feedback form, but it's better than expected service, as expected or worse than expected. So I need some logic now, because I need to tell the script what it should do with these rating numbers. And this is where the power comes in. I can add an if statement. I can add a variable from my CSV, and I can tell it that if it equals 2, then I need to do something more. And I've got a second one, so I'm just going to go straight ahead, and if it equals 3. Now what I need to do is, you might have noticed when I recorded the scenario, I picked the top option on the form. I need it to skip down for me. So there's a key combination that I can actually get it to press for me.
Yeah.
And then I can copy this. So if the rating is 1, it automatically picks the top option. If it's 2, it's going to press the down key before it scrolls and submits the form. If it's 3, it's going to press the down key twice. So I can just paste this in here a couple of times, and we should be good. Right, so now that I have that set up, I can drop this down, play all the iterations in the CSV, and this should loop through, filling in that form multiple times for me.
Perfect.
And the names are completely randomly generated from name generators on the internet, as well with the things they bought. So I don't know if you can buy pine cones from shops, but Bob Davis did. Now we could do some other things, like not have it close the browser window and just click in the title bar. I mean, we can do lots of different things with this, but the point here and the example that's being shown is that as it navigates through that CSV, it's just populating this form, and we've done that in the space of what, 10 minutes, Sam?
Less than 10 minutes, actually. Yeah. And obviously, So once this is done, you send it to the director, which is kind of orchestrator, that you can tell it to run from bots from different locations, or you can say, when I have a new CSV file, trigger the event, and it will show you for each record what it did and if it was successful or not, and why it's not. Because let's say one of the data elements is missing in one of the records, it will fail and then continue to the next one, and you can see why it failed, and it will take a screenshot for that.
Yeah, so as Sam just said, you wouldn't run this from Scenario Builder. What you actually do is you send this to another component, which you'll see in an architecture diagram shortly, and that's called Director. And Director runs synthetic users or virtual users, which then execute these scenarios for you. So once you have this run once, you can reuse this many times. And I think I'll flick back over to you, Sam.
Okay, so here I am. Thank you, Lee. So okay, so now this all comes together here. This is our component. So before, let's say in this example here, this use case is if we have a script to enter a new patient in the medical application, we can run. So we create a script the same way Lee did with Scenario Builder. Then we can run performance tests from all our points of presence, generating dozens or thousands of users from different locations across the globe, and see how the system performs before we move to production. And obviously you can have one script or multiple scripts that represent a day in the life of your organization. So you can enter patient, subscribe medications, look up patient records and things like that all at the same time. If we focus just on enter patient, with functional testing, instead of running a large number of users, we actually run a large number of data and reading from Excel file, which will create different test cases and automatically for you, like what if we're adding an elderly patient or patient out of state with insurance, without insurance, and things like that. And then we can get for each test case the result of it passed or failed. And again, if there's any failures, we get the screenshot of the failure. And that gives you a good idea functionally if the application works as it should. And then once the application moves to production, then we can continuously monitor looking up a patient, making sure that the response time is acceptable. And then we can go throughout the process every 5 minutes or every 15 minutes or so on, depending on the requirements. And lastly, RPA, we can copy, for instance, patient data from an Excel spreadsheet or from a legacy system or a system in a clinic and put it in our main EMR system that using RPA. So this is what the platform does. It brings all your automation needs under one platform. And obviously you don't have to have all the solutions, because we know that we have some customers that are not ready for RPA yet, for instance, and they just are interested in performance testing and continuous monitoring. And you can have just those. It's just the license that activates the modules and things like that. So with Automai, you can confidently predict how your systems are going to behave in production environment. It can also be used when you upgrade your system, or whether it's the operating system or the environment or the application itself, making sure that it's going to behave as it should. With codeless solution that we have, you really don't need to have developers involved in creating your scripts. You rather focus on what needs to be tested, not how. And that would allow you also to streamline automation throughout your enterprise and make sure that you save on training costs and making sure that everybody's using the same procedures within the organization. So as we saw, it's really simple. The idea is very simple that we came up with about 17 years ago, which is exactly replicating what the end users do when they are interacting with an application. We look at visual clues on the screen, and that's what the bots do. when we record a script that, well, like what Lee was doing, the bot was looking for the button, looking for the field labels, and actually in some of the scripts he was using just the tab button, so it records the keystrokes, and when you click somewhere it records the image either of that button, the whole button, or if you click on the field, it's going to record the image of the label, and that's where sometimes it needs some training, and it would know if it's a left label or top label or things like that. Now, when it plays back, it doesn't matter if the image is not exactly the same or it's not in the same location. It will still find it all over the desktop, and when it finds it, it will move according to where it found it to its right, certain pixels, and then click, and then we'll click on the field and start entering username and password. And that's what I was saying before. Also, you can actually tell it to look for it in black and white, so that would depend on image by image basis if it's changing a lot, and that would be just at the time of the execution where it would change the image buffer and desktop buffer to black and white, and then it will try to find it on the desktop. Also, when we do continuous monitoring or RPA, sometimes you have things that you don't know that would happen, like a pop-up window that just says the system is going to go in maintenance mode or things like that. So you don't want the bot to fail because it cannot find the image. It just at any given time will acknowledge it and then go back and continue where it failed and not fail, not give you false positives. When there's a failure, it records what's on the screen. It tells you, I'm looking for a patient menu, but I'm seeing this on the screen. Sometimes you see something like an SQL error or real issues with the infrastructure. Sometimes you see errors like this, which are functional errors where it just cannot add to that facility or add that patient without a social security number or whatever it is that's causing the issue. But the most important thing is that you always see what the end user sees, and also not only that, it's even the response time, transaction time that we give you, that the software gives you, it's the user sentiment. It's from the moment I click here until I see my login screen, what is the elapsed time between those two actions, or between this time and multiple actions. So the scenario builder has a robotic approach that is all from the front end. It doesn't mean that it cannot run backend scripts and things like that. It has all actions here, that anything that end user does, you can trigger a program and get the output of that program. You can add the business logic, the if-then condition switches. You can add anything that the end user does, and it makes it really easy to create. It has reusable components, which means that we don't want you to create the same scripts multiple times. For instance, if you're going to log into Citrix, then log in inside Citrix to Epic system, and then add a patient, there will be here, you can create scripts just for logging in Citrix and then Epic and so on, and then create components, divide the complexity of the script into components. That way you have a library of components or global scripts that if anything changes, let's say I have 100 scripts that are logging into Citrix and then Epic, if anything changed in there, I can just change those scripts once, and that replicates on all the other scripts as well. If the look and feel changed or anything changed, that can be the case. Also, we group all the components like menu items and buttons and things like that into menu components, if you will. And that way, if the total look and feel of your application changed, you can just change those items. The logic stayed the same, the field stayed the same. It's just those things, the menus that change. It makes it really easy to maintain your scripts. So the loader would allow you to take those business processes and run multiple users at the same time, and then see exactly how it happens in real life. It's really the same way the end users access your application. The architecture is pretty simple as well. So you have scenario builder, you build your script that goes to the application, interacts with the application, and then once it's like what Lee did in a live demo, once your script works fine, then you send it to the director, which actually will schedule the execution of the script. You can create a test plan. We're going to see in a second how to create a test plan that that really replicate how your users start their day and how you inject the users, not all at the same time, but replicates how they come in, the shifts change and all that stuff. And then it's the director that will ask the bot manager to execute the test, which would be each bot manager manages its own bots. And the bot managers are Windows, either Windows PCs or desktop. And the number of bots that be managed, run from each server depends on the resources of that server. And then you see here that the interaction is going one way. It's just, which means that you can have the director in the bots actually that are accessing the applications in secure area, and the director may be on SaaS. This is not a SaaS solution, this is actually on-prem, but we will have a SaaS solution soon that goes one way. And if there's, at the same time as a test is running, we collect persona metrics that can be from Azure or Citrix or AWS or Google also, or even on-prem, just using WMI collectors to get metrics to see what's happening in the backend while you're accessing the application and running a load from the front end. So let's talk about the persona a little bit. It's pretty easy to configure a persona, which is just looks at the service principal or service for pulling performance data from the backend, from services like Citrix or Citrix DaaS or Azure, so that you can see the metrics that are happening while the test is running. When you add a test plan, you just give it a name and select your project, and then you tell it how you want to distribute it and how you want the users to start. Then you select your persona that you defined before, and it will automatically pull out the host pools. Then you can select which ones you want, and by default, you're going to have certain thresholds that when they're met, you're going to receive alerts when the test is running to see what that you're using a lot of CPU now, and actually you can compare multiple executions of your test that would allow you to decide on how to size your machine. Then if you have any data elements, any parameters in your script, you can select those parameters and how you want to use them, and then you start your test. This is a video that we did fairly quickly, but Lee will talk about live reports. I'm stopping this video now. I'll hand it over to you, Lee, to talk about how you can compare and see the reports of such a test. So let me go here. Here you are.
So something to bear in mind as Sam's talking about these personas, I want to highlight that those performance metrics are coming directly from the environment that you're performance testing in. So the loader is running those multiple scenarios, running those synthetic users, and we're grabbing performance metrics from the backend or from Citrix Cloud or Azure. It's all there. And then we do something, we create some test plans. And then once we have our test plans, now you would have noticed as the drop downs were happening there, the test plan is where you select how many users you want to run different sections of your workload. So this is like completely flexible. Okay, so you can run 25 users watching a YouTube video, 100 users running Office applications, and all this stuff works in tandem with the test plan whilst you're capturing those backend performance metrics. So what I want to show you here is some tests that we've already run. Okay, and what we've done here, we've got a couple of tests and we've got some nice test names. Okay, so we've got a memory optimized instance in Azure, and then we've got a standard DS machine, and that's our baseline run. I can compare these two tests on screen so we can see our test runs. Okay, so that's how many users and what the test looked like. But if I click this up here in the top right, I can actually compare our back-end metrics. Now that looks a bit busy right now, but for anybody that's done performance testing, this is one of the hardest things. You have to get the performance metrics, and then once you have them, you have to put them into a format that allows you to analyze them. And that's always a graph, right? But just getting perfmon data into a graph can be a bit tricky. Yes, it graphs it for you, but if you want to compare these things, it's not quite that simple. So this is powerful tech. So we have everything. We've got CPU, memory, disk IOPS, number of sessions, connection failures, and then this little box here, this sort of more filled color area, that is actually an application response time. So this is a bit of code in our scenario where we say start a timer here and finish a timer there. And you can see here, this is searching for a patient in a medical system. So I'm going to kick all this stuff back. I just want sessions and an app response time. Okay, and I'm going to do the same here for the bottom graph. And you can see here we've got a standard DS, and then we've got an E-series machine too. Now these graphs look pretty similar, right? But what I want to draw your attention to is this metric back here, right, on the left. So we have multiple axes for different types of the graph. And if we hover over these, we get a bit of an indication. So we can see here, as our user sessions ramp up, our application response time increases. But we can see that the E-series machine, we get to about 3 seconds for an application search. If we go down here to our D-series machine, we can see as we are loading the users up, we've got some serious increases, 9 seconds, 12 seconds, till we hit sort of our peak, and we're at about 15 seconds for the search to come back. So that's obviously not good. Now, this on its own is great, but it just tells us that that machine spec is not the right one, but we don't know why. We need to know why. So now I can start overlaying my performance metrics. So I can see here, CPU hits 100% some of the time. And we can see our CPU metrics over here. Sorry, no, CPU does not hit 100%. On the E-series, it's okay. We've got a max of 60%. And over here on the D-series, we have some high CPU, but it's not peaked, right? So then we can add our memory consumption. Okay, now we can potentially see our problem, right? Our D-series machine has high memory utilization, and that's at 100%. So that could be the reason why we have a problem. And we can see here on our E-series machine, our memory consumption is good, our CPU isn't really peaking. Okay, and then if we want to look at how our tests generally performed, so what was the impact of our performance metrics peaking like that? What actually caused any sort of failures? We can look at connection failure counts, and we can look at general failures for these two graphs. And we can see here we had 5 connection failures over here, but for the D-series machine, we really got to the point where we broke it, and we ended up with more failure counts on the workload and connection failure accounts too. So these sorts of graphs, they're really valuable when it comes to analyzing this data. And it's very quick and very easy for me to see this directly in a console. So performance testing software, it's actually pretty difficult to do this stuff and to get that sort of insight straight away. So I have some more PowerPoint slides for you. So how does Automai fit into all this? So we put some workloads together, which are almost sort of cookie cut, almost EUC workloads. We've put some workloads together that will allow you, once you have Automai set up, you import these workloads, and they are sort of pre-canned to work with Office out of the box and some browsers. And there is some predefined content in these workloads. And this predefined content is just going to allow you to kickstart either a performance testing process or continuous monitoring, any of these things. It will work with all of them. So what we've included is an Outlook workload, which is tailored so that it will work with Office 365 in cached mode, or it will work with a PST offline, and the PST is provided. The idea around that was we didn't want to have to get you to configure GPOs to configure the environment, so it does all this for you. There's pre-canned PowerShell scripts. Now, your standard users that you use to do the testing, they need to be able to run PowerShell, obviously. We also have a workload for Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and we support those 4 browsers too. So there's a couple of video pages and a couple of static websites that get navigated around, and they're the browsers that you can choose. And all of this is modular. So I'm going to skip through some of these bits in the video because I definitely am talking outside of these timings. We mentioned user personas, and with user personas, you can actually, as Sam highlighted earlier, we can sort of categorize, or we can create a workload based on a persona of a user, which apps they use, and then when we are actually comparing performance metrics and response times, we're doing it with that user workload in mind, hence persona. So that can yield some seriously interesting data as well. And there's just some examples here. So, you know, what's the heavier application? Which one is used most? There's a bit of a demo in here on these workloads actually running, and I knew I'd overshoot it. So let me just draw back a little bit, and I'll talk through these. So here's the Outlook workload. Very quick, fires up an email for you, types out a bunch of content that's all random. We have an Excel workload too. Again, it's pre-canned data, but we can highlight a column. Because we can click on all the UI, we create a graph. Here's a pre-canned website that we actually navigate around. Another one. These workloads, if you leave them running, everything running, they take around 40 minutes. But you can run as many iterations as you like. We have some video in there, so if you want to tailor video, see what the impact is on your environment. This is more like a graphical type of workload. Everybody loves PDFs. So what about configuring these things? So we haven't got a live demo of snippets, but snippets are modular scenarios that accept variables. So the way that these workloads are written is that we have a snippet for different types of things. So opening an application, for example, is a snippet. So we're passing variables in, as Sam mentioned, modular, and then we don't have to continually reanalyze the same scenarios and record them. We're using reusable code. Now, that's really useful when it comes to things like different EUC vendors, where you're logging onto vendor solutions, but there isn't an API or something like that. So if we wanted to log on to AVD with this, we could do that today without a problem. And there is some functionality there for MFA, right, Sam?
Correct, absolutely, yeah.
So snippets, let's go straight through. Okay, cool. Now, I mentioned this is all modular and you can tailor this dependent upon who you're going to be testing with. And you can see here, I have a bunch of global variables. Now, this is where I'm actually setting up my test plan. And you can see here, there's a ton of options, and these are built into those scenarios. So we have log off on complete. So if we want the users to log off when they finish running the workload, we just set that to a 1. If we want to leave them sitting there ready for a second iteration, we can leave that as a 0. And then there's individual closes for the apps. So if we want to close the browser when we've finished using it, we just set that to a 1, and we will literally be opening an app, doing a test, closing an app. Same for Excel, Outlook, PowerPoint, and Word. We're able to tailor the load and actually what that might mean for a performance test. So if we want something heavier, we can actually leave all these apps running and have Automai just navigate around all of these apps. In the next set, we can actually choose whether or not we want the apps to run anyway. So if we want to exclude Excel, we want to exclude browser video, we can do that here as well, just by setting a 1 or a 0. Also the browser choice, Chrome, MS Edge, IE, no one uses IE anymore, but it's there, and Firefox. So you don't have to tailor these are, you just set the parameters and let it run. We then have the actual locations for these applications. Not everybody installs everything in program files all the time. So you can tailor this as well, tell it where your applications are and it will run them. And then some environment specific variables. Now at the moment, we have a reusable code block to log into Citrix, and we will be adding other vendors. Here I'm setting specific variables in order to be able to configure how to log into Citrix and then what my Outlook mode should be. So do I want to use the local PST or do I want cached mode? The only bit that is specific that you need to configure is the content zip at the bottom. You need to tell the loader where it's going to grab the content for the workloads from. And that's just provided in a zip file. So dead easy, you just need a network share for that. And this here is just a demonstration of how the workloads are laid out, which is a bit speedy. But each section is blocked out and it's all commented, so that if you do want to come in and you want to add your own stuff to this, you can. You can see all the variables that I just showed you in the loader, and they're actually here in Scenario Builder. So close browser, close Excel, all of that stuff, and that's exactly what you see there in the loader. So it's the same variables. So you can hard code some of these if you fancy it, or create your own. There's our Citrix connection block, and what you'll notice is, nope, I'm not there yet. These are variables still. Right, bear with me. Okay, cool. So this bit here is the reusable code block. If the environment type is Citrix, then play the Citrix login script, and that's where what we call one of those scenarios, one of those scripts.
Perfect.
Then we have our individual applications. Okay, I think that covers that, Sam. So
Yep.
with that, I hand back to you, right?
Yeah, actually, that's actually a very good good demo that explains everything we covered so far with the what should I call it, with the snippets. That was the last image there on the snippet. I know we're running a little bit out of time, but so I'm going to try to be brief. We talked about RPA and about performance testing and backend monitors. Now to bring it back together, we're going to talk about Watcher, which is continuous monitoring, which monitors the end user sentiment, making sure that the applications are not only available, they respond the way they should respond, and they're not slow around the clock, so if need be. Now, one of the things that are very important, because Automai Watcher is used even when the real users are not around, we can be alerted by events if something goes wrong, even before the end users are affected by the slowness or availability of the application. And it also makes it very easy to do trend analysis over time and to know if the application is performing better or worse over time, or after a patch, you apply a patch or things like that. I can show you actually I'm going to show you the dashboard quickly here. You can baseline the user experience and continuously monitor against it. We are actually going to add indexes that give you a health of your application overall very soon, before the end of the year. Simulate sessions from any point of presence to get continuously what's happening from that area, from your clinics or branches or things like that. You can get alerts, and they all include screenshots, whether with email or webhooks. You can send alerts to Teams or Slack or things like that. You can also do double hop scenarios where you connect into Citrix and then launching from inside Citrix, launching a virtual app. And you can test against any application, any host pool, in-house or on the clouds. It's the same architecture that we talked about before. You see that it's the same director, and you can switch from one module to another. The only difference here is, instead of simulating a large number of users, you're going to simulate one or few from all your strategic location. So let me show you a live here dashboard, just to show you what I'm talking about here. So when you connect to the Watcher, you see right away by application and the areas you're monitoring from. You can see what's happening with that application, if there's any slowness. Right away, you see the bot location, you see the average response time, the number of successes. This is for today, for instance, and you can define the timeline, number of failures, and total check for that timeline. So I added this one yesterday. This is a Citrix Cloud, going through Citrix Cloud and launching a medical application inside. And I see here, for instance, I have 93 failures. If I drill a little bit further, I can see right away here, this is the overall. I can see it by transaction too, but let's see what's happening. Then we look at transactions. That way I can come back. Sorry about clicking everywhere. So when you click on the failures, you see screenshots, and every time the failure occurred, and actually what happened, in the middle of the night, actually was logging into Citrix. You see that the timeline here, exactly what happened for each. We have a screenshot at every single step where it clicked on the screen. Now just logging into Citrix. So if I open this image here, we will see, I think this is, so you see exactly what was on the screen at that time, where you clicked to enter username, password. So it was all going fine until it came down here to the desktop itself. When it launched the VDI desktop, it did not open. So you waited for 60 seconds to see this image here, which is the Windows icon, I mean the Windows menu here in the desktop, not the one outside. And it did not happen. And we had a problem with our lab. We just had to reboot it. I'm not a technical person. I don't know what the problem was. It's just for this demo, I asked them to reboot it. And then you see here at 8 a.m. Pacific time, everything went back to normal again. So let's see, the application is a little bit slow here. This machine, we're trying to push it a little bit over the limit. So it gives you a good idea right away on what's happening with your system, like I was saying here, and you can actually do transactions. You can compare different transactions from different locations. You see here, this is start the desktop. This is the one that was having an issue. You can see what was happening there, and it will tell you the reference time, which is the baseline, what happened with how it is performing based on that baseline that we see. And you can compare multiple transactions in the same graph, or the same transaction across different locations here. So that's you can create those charts so that you can see and give you a good idea on what's happening with your application at any given time. And of course, here you have the same number of data where you see the average response time and also standard deviation, which tells you what's going on with where your response time is coming there.
It's important to remember as well, whilst Sam's talking about this, that because Automai is working on visual cues, it's not giving you the logon metrics or the response times from an agent that's sitting on the machine. So it's not actually directly related to the performance of the machine. It's directly related to what the user would see, which might be related to the performance of the machine.
Can we, Sam, can we try to wrap up, because there are quite a few questions here.
I think we should stop because, yeah, go ahead. Let's wrap it up because there are a few things, but I think it's better to answer the questions. It's just talking more about explaining how the software works. But let's answer the questions, and if we have time, we can come back to this.
Sure. First, I want to just say, if I don't get there are quite a few questions. So if I don't get to your question, please, we can certainly forward them to the Automai team, and they will make sure to answer them personally to you. So first of all, you mentioned about pop-up windows that come up. I would imagine there are different pop-up windows. How can the system determine a pop-up window from a legitimate one? So a pop-up window, for example, and asks you to log on, for example, in the office. If you're not logged on, how does it determine a legitimate fill-in? You need to fill this in from just an okay that you have to dismiss.
Well, so yeah, so that's a very good question. Now, the pop-up windows that I was talking about are the ones that we don't know when they would happen. Like the example I was giving, it's gonna just say the system is going in maintenance mode. And what happens is that we have what we call failure handling or on failure. So if the script is being executed and then something is not normal because a pop-up window shows up and it's not supposed to, it's gonna go to on failure. And then in there you run tests. You say, well, if you're seeing this message, system going maintenance mode, or the title is this, if you see, you can cover all the things that you think might happen. And then you say, then acknowledge it, click on OK. and resume, it will go back to where it fell in the script and continue from there if it doesn't see it anymore. So you acknowledge it, it goes away, go back and look for the image you were looking for. If you find it, you continue, and so on. If there are certain things, let's say, where it's saying you, well, you are missing the password or the password expired, that's a pop-up window that it's not expecting it. It's going to go to on failure, and all the other tests, it's going to say, no, this is not for maintenance mode, this is not all this stuff. It's not going to resume. It will take a screenshot of the one that's actually a failure, and then it will stop there and tell you and send you the alert. I'm having this issue. It's telling it, this is what's on the desktop. Does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And I'm assuming that you can take different actions based upon different error conditions.
Absolutely. Yes.
You had mentioned MFA, but you really didn't discuss how it handles MFA.
Well, I'm not too technical. The only thing I know, it works a little bit like the apps that you have on your phone, where it has a code. I know I use it with Salesforce, for instance, where for the user you get a code and you get it you configure an action that says, okay, this is my secret key. When you come here, get the code to the PIN number. So it executes a program that gets a PIN number, and then that's the one that you're going to type in. When it pops up, it says, what is add your 4-digit codes or whatever. That's how it works. And I can demo it to anyone. I think we might have a video how to use it that we can send it to the people that are interested in it.
Okay. If you have multiple users, how many different loaders do you need to handle?
If we have multiple what? I'm sorry?
Users, to handle multiple users, how many different computers do you need?
Well, so usually we use Windows Server. So each Windows Server can simulate anywhere between 25 to 500 users, depending on the resources of that machine. So depending on the CPU, memory, disk also, because each remote desktop session will simulate an end user desktop. And that's how, and it's all managed by the director. So you can use local users or domain users, and then each desktop that's how it takes images, and that's how it runs all that stuff.
How is licensing handled for the product?
So for the performance testing is based on number of concurrent users. So it's if let's say you have a 10,000 user license and you want to simulate 2,000 users concurrent users, that's going to be the license that you will get. So the pricing is different on, obviously, as the number goes up, the pricing per user goes down. And for the other modules, all the other ones are by number of robots. So if you are doing continuous monitoring and you are monitoring from 20 locations, those are your points of presence. So you pay for 20 bots. That's how. And it is, we do licenses by project. We do yearly licenses, and then 3 years, of course, you'll have multiple discounts, and the monthly, quarterly licenses. So it's we can tailor it to your projects.
Mm-hmm. Are the bots Windows only?
They run on Windows only today. Yes, they run on Windows. We do have customers that simulates iOS applications and stuff, but we use emulators to do that. But it's all running on Windows.
Okay, and can you connect to the underlying host like ESX to get performance data?
We do API calls, so I know that's how we get data from Azure and AWS and so on, and I think it would be the same way with the other hosts and WMI as well. That would be the persona area.
Right.
I don't think there's any integration right now, Sam. Not for something like ESX, but it's definitely doable, right? It's not a lot more than WMI.
You had mentioned that the bots look for field IDs.
No, they don't. No,
they don't.
The bots actually, they look for images, and they also look that's why we're talking about training the bots. They're starting to look at screens visually using computer vision and analyzing the screen and recognizing buttons and icons and fields, input fields based on how they look visually. That's how, and you can train it by project. So obviously the fields look differently from medical application, from Epic to Meditech and so on.
We still have quite a few questions, but I see we're at the top of the hour, so I apologize. We can forward to you the remaining questions to get answered, and I will hand the back to Stephanie.
Hi, thanks so much. Yes, I will absolutely capture all of these questions and pass them along. And if you opted in at registration to share your contact information, I'm sure that someone at Automai will get back to you. If you didn't opt in and your question didn't get answered, and you would like them to contact you, just let me know. You can email me at Stephanie. Actually, I'll put it in the chat for you right now. You can always email me at stephanie.boozer@mycugc.org. There you go. Definitely let me know if you want to be contacted if you didn't get your question answered. Definitely want to get you answers today. And then really quickly, I know some of you may have opted in for a chance to win an Amazon gift card. As soon as I shut down this webinar, I'm going to pull the attendee report, and I'm going to use the Google randomizer to randomly select a winner, and I will let you know. So be on the lookout for an email from me, or you can watch us on Twitter. Just follow #myCUGC, and I will announce the winner there as well. All right, well, I want to thank you, Lee and Sam for being with us today and making time for us. Really appreciate you guys being on today.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you at another CUGC local meeting or Excel event, hopefully, or another webinar soon. Thanks, bye.
Bye-bye.